Hello everybody, I apologize for taking some time to make this video. I was waiting for the Android 17 update to roll out to see if it would fix the issue I'm currently experiencing with my Google Pixel 7 Pro. Before I go into the details, here's a bit of background. I bought this Pixel 7 Pro secondhand. Out of the box, it was running Android 15, and then sometime around December 2025 or January 2026, I don't remember exactly when, it received the Android 16 update. And finally, in July 2026, it was updated to Android 17. Unfortunately, even after updating to Android 17, the issue still hasn't been resolved. So let's take a closer look to like closer so let's take a closer look at what's going on. The biggest glitch on my Pixel 7 Pro is that the videos I record don't always match what I'm pointing at in the viewfinder. The frequency of this issue has changed with each Android update. When the phone was running Android 15, it happened every now and then. I'd say about 1 out of every 10 videos. It usually happens in low light situation, although it could also happen in broad daylight. I noticed the problem affects both the main camera and the 5x periscope camera, but the shift is much more noticeable on the 5x lens. As time went on and the phone was updated to Android 16, the issue became much more frequent. It got to the point where I couldn't trust the final result of the videos I recorded. So I had to switch to Open Camera as my primary video recording app. Using Open Camera confirmed that the problem comes from Google's stock camera app. Not only were the videos stable, but the recorded footage also matched exactly what I saw in the viewfinder. For me, this is a ridiculous experience. Google released the Pixel 7 Pro back in 2022, and before I even bought this phone secondhand, they had more than enough time to fix this issue through a software update. Before this Pixel, I used the Huawei P40 Pro, another flagship phone. During the years I own it, I never experienced anything like this. Now, some people might say that this isn't a big deal because I can simply use Open Camera instead. But that's not the point. The stock camera app should be the best option because it's developed and optimized by the phone manufacturer in a way that no third party app can fully match. There is also no guarantee that a third party app will continue working forever. A future update a future app update could introduce bugs or compatibility issue that completely ruin the experience. I'm not trying to jinx Open Camera. I just think users shouldn't have to rely on a third party app to get a reliable video recording on a flagship phone. Before I end this section, it's worth mentioning that this isn't an isolated issue. Users of other Pixel models have also reported experiencing the same problem. Unfortunately, in my testing, this issue um, unfortunately in my testing, this issue occurred across every video resolution and frame rate I tried, so it wasn't limited to a specific recording mode. The second issue is much less serious, and thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. Sometimes, when I tap the recent apps button, instead of showing the app I was using most recently, it jumps all the way back to one of the oldest apps I left open. This isn't just a one time glitch. It happens. When it happens, it keeps happening repeatedly, just like you'll see in the video on the screen. Fortunately, the issue usually fixes itself after a few minutes. I mostly experienced this on Android 16. Since updating to Android 17, I haven't encountered it again, so hopefully Google has fixed it. Speaking of recent apps menu, I experienced a somewhat similar issue on my Huawei P40 Pro. Sometimes after swiping an app away to close it, the app wasn't actually closed. If I tap it again, it would reopen exactly where I left it, as if I had never closed it. Huawei never fixed this issue, but I eventually found a workaround. Instead of closing apps one after another, I would swipe one app away, wait a few seconds, and then close the next one. It wasn't ideal, but at least it worked. Since we're talking about multitasking, here's how I'd rank the phones I've used. In the first place, um, in the first place is the Realme 6 Pro. Even though it's a mid-range phone, its RAM management is surprisingly good. Some apps can stay in memory even after the screen has been off for more than 12 hours. Of course, it depends on the app. For example, Chrome will eventually refresh if you have too many tabs open. But with a fewer than about 20 tabs, it usually keeps everything in memory. I believe this is thanks to Realme's app freezing feature. Second place goes to the Pixel 7 Pro. It also keeps apps in memory for hours without constantly refreshing them. Although not quite as well as the Realme, last place goes to the Huawei P40 Pro. This was especially disappointing because the phone has 8 GB of RAM, yet it struggled to keep apps running in the background. For example, if I open Chrome and then spend just a few minutes using Shopee or TikTok, Chrome is often completely reloaded when I switch back. The same thing happens with note taking apps. As a YouTuber, I constantly switch between my notes and Chrome while researching and writing scripts. Having my browser or notes refresh every few minutes is extremely frustrating. I've tried every battery optimization and background app setting I could find, but nothing solved the problem. My conclusion is that Huawei's software is simply too aggressive at killing background apps in order to save battery life. I also asked Honor Magic Pro I also asked Honor Magic 4 Pro users about this before deciding which phone to buy. They told me Honor's RAM management behaves very similar. One example they mentioned was that after recording a video for a few minutes and returning to the home screen, the launcher would refresh along with other background apps. That's that was a major deal breaker for me, and one of the reason I decided to buy the Pixel 7 Pro instead. One of the things I find most frustrating about the Pixel 7 Pro is its weak signal reception. To be honest, I never expected this to be an issue on a flagship phone. I always assume a flagship device would have top top-tier hardware, including its cellular modem and antenna performance. This is one area where my Huawei P40 Pro clearly outperformed the Pixel 7 Pro. The best way I can describe the difference is this. My Huawei P40 Pro was able to hold a 5G connection indoors most of the time. Even if it occasionally dropped to 4G, it would usually reconnect to 5G within a few minutes on its own. The Pixel 7 Pro behaves differently. Once it drops to 4G, it often refuses to reconnect to 5G automatically. The only reliable way I've found to get 5G back is to toggle aeroplane mode or use an app to force an art-only mode. Even then, the phone often falls back to 4G again after just a few seconds. For reference, the carrier I was using at the time deployed 5G NSA. In theory, the LTE anchor connection should help the phone maintain a 5G connection even when the 5G signal becomes weak. However, based on my experience, the Pixel 7 Pro still struggled to stay connected indoors. Interestingly, I experienced the opposite behavior with my Nokia Fastmail 3 modem. Instead of dropping from 5G SA to 5G NSA when the signal became weak, it preferred staying on 5G SA even though the N78 signal fluctuated between around 80 to 100 dBm. When I first powered on the modem, it briefly connected using 5G NSA before switching to 5G SA and continuing to use that mode. I just found it interesting that these two devices behave in completely opposite ways under similar network conditions. I know some of you have been waiting for a 1 year camera comparison between the Pixel 7 Pro and the Huawei P40 Pro. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make that video. The reason is that my Huawei P40 Pro's camera has become unreliable. Sometimes it works perfectly fine, but other times the camera app only shows a black screen and or crash completely. Because of that, I can't produce a fair or consistent camera comparison between the two phones. Maybe I'll revisit the comparison in the future if I manage to repair the Huawei P40 Pro, but for now, it's simply not possible. Despite this issue, I still think the Pixel Despite these issues, I still think the Pixel 7 Pro has a great camera, a clean Android experience, and solid performance. However, these software bugs significantly affected my day-to-day experience, and I hope Google continues to improve them through future updates. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you found this review helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below sharing your experience with the Pixel 7 Pro. I'd love to hear whether you've encountered any of these issues yourself. I'm mresult0415 signing off. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.